All right, welcome to another edition of the Jarrod Thomas Show podcast. I keep telling every episode, I keep saying, I'm going to work on this name, and I never do. So it's still the Jarrod Thomas Show podcast. I'm Jarrod Thomas, looking a little bit sporty today. I don't know what the hell this came in a Stitch Fix box. Johnathan, are you jelly?
I'm not. Well, I'm jealous. Sure, I did get the memo though of the hoodie with the rolled up sleeves.
Yeah, the kind of the. I call them fa hoodies.
That's what all the hip guys are doing.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. And when people think hip, right here. Johnathan Holth has been a friend of first the Jarrod Thomas Show 100 years ago. I think we became acquainted, if my memory serves me correctly, over all things downtown parking.
Yeah.
Now, Johnathan is a guy that forever and a day has been involved in downtown, I'm going to dare say, at various levels.
Yes.
He owns or is part owner of or is certainly still involved in two businesses in downtown Grand Forks. And the Toasted Frog and then the Urban Stampede are still in his sphere of the things that he does in life. And downtown parking has been a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you the floor before we get into much other things. Just to say, how's that going? I feel like we should follow up on that.
Well, I think, first of all, it's good to have you back on the airwaves in this capacity.
Well, thank you.
I was reflecting on my drive out here. I really sort of cut my community service chops in the peak 9 to noon era, I would say, of the Jarrod Thomas Show. And so, I was a frequent guest on the show.
You were.
And,
absolutely.
Discussing, very popular topics in Grand Forks, like taking away parking and adding bike lanes. And you were always fair, though. I didn't have any media training. And when I say, I had none. But I was always comfortable coming out here and having a discussion and knew it would be fair. So
I learned a long time ago on that front. Okay, so on the surface, bike lanes, to those that drive cars and don't drive bikes, sounds like the dumbest thing you could ever possibly do. But then I thought, these people that I meet, they're not like stupid people.
Yeah.
So then I have to, at least I thought I did, I have to take a position of trying to, okay, so Johnathan, tell me why you think this is a good idea. And then you'd walk me through it. And by the end, I'd be like, I still think there's some bikers out there that could do it a little better.
Yeah,
but there's also some drivers out there that could do it a little better.
This is true,
and we gotta live together. And that was a lesson you taught me. Was look, we gotta figure out how we can live together. If we want to have a downtown that we want, bikes are going to be a part of it. So how can we do this better? Which I always appreciated. You're more interested in the solution, willing to take some lumps on the way to the how and the why or whatever.
It's part of it,
right? But you were smart enough, and you could see far enough into the future to know, okay, if we're going to do this, okay, I got to get through thank you for your call. And then we move on to the next guy, right? Until finally we got some good conversation out of it.
That's kind of triggering hearing you say that.
But I always thought it was in everybody's best interest to at least hear you out.
Sure.
And if at the end we disagreed, well, then we disagreed. Well, whatever the hell, what the hell. Yeah. Doesn't mean I wouldn't buy you a soda the next time I saw it. It just means we didn't agree on that.
So that was good. And that was a fun, so you asked, the state of downtown and stuff. I think downtown is great.
Beautiful.
There are challenges, like there always have been. There are new challenges that arise. We discussed some of those at City Council on Monday night. I was there, with regarding, the homeless population and things like that. So, but I really haven't been involved in a long time because I've been involved in other things. But I also believe that, you pass the torch on these things, and new leaders get developed, and I think there have been great leaders in downtown that have continued to build it and do a better job than I think I would have if I would have stuck around with it. So I'm really happy with the state of downtown right now.
Oh, it's gorgeous, and I think there's been a lot of people that have put a lot of sweat equity into downtown. That have done a lot of advocating for downtown. I think we've had city leaders that have been generous, holy Hannah, with the resources that are available to them by way of taxpayers with downtown.
Yeah.
But in the end, what we have is a bustling downtown that we can all be proud of.
It's a good product.
It very much is, and people are living down there and shopping down there and thriving down there, and it's just it's become like a crown jewel of our community.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think it's great. So you referenced that you have sort of moved on to other projects. And
Yeah.
I was making the observation before we started that my observation of you, Johnathan, is you're a guy that I believe if I were to put you through a myriad of personality or strength profiles, I think what would come back to me is you're a guy that likes to build things. And I think you build things, and again, I'm just struggling for words today, which is bad when you're in this role, is you get kind of not bored with it, but maybe
Antsy?
you get antsy. You get ready for a new challenge. You're kind of like, all right, so I got this up and going, so now what can I do? Maybe there's a little bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit there.
I think that's fair.
And so you decided, I think, somewhere along the line that you were going to get in the restaurant business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested how, of all the things you could have done, how did you get in the restaurant business?
Yeah, great question. You know, I started working in restaurants at a very young age. My first job was Shakey's Pizza, and if you remember that,
Hell yeah, do I remember that?
For the OG Grand Forks people, and just kind of continued to do that, and started to work at restaurants as I was attending UND, and one of those restaurants that I was working at was Sanders 1907. And when I started working at Sanders and working for Kim Holmes, I think my mindset on the whole industry shifted, and I started to just fall in love with it. So I've started to fall in love with this notion that people could be having the worst day and come out to a restaurant and have an incredible experience, and it can turn their day around. And you have these different personalities that would get together and break bread, and Kim just really taught sort of the love of hospitality. But I'll never forget, there was one night after work, he pulled me into his office and just said, Johnathan, I just want to tell you, if you want to have a career in this business, you can do it. You have the skill set to do it. And I think everything shifted for me at that point, to the point where I was like, I'm going to do this full time. Dropped out of college and figured, the best education I could get, if this is what I wanted to do, was working in the damn restaurant every day. So did that, and then just continued to sort of learn. It's where I met my longtime business partner, Sean Clapp, who we're still business partners to this day. So that's kind of how I got into it, and it turned into a career.
So I have seen, and this is a little bit of an aside, but tied in, for a while. And by the way, if Johnathan will have you, I shouldn't necessarily put your personal Instagram stuff out there, but if Johnathan will have you, for a while you were doing, I thought, a really nice job of putting some of the dishes you make at home.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, again, we're going to get into what other things you've been doing, and people will perhaps understand very quickly why you don't do that anymore, because you're too busy to. But man, if your wife was sitting here, would she tell me you can cook?
She would. Yeah, she would. And
Is that where it started? Was in the kitchen for you?
No, it started in the front of the house as a server.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
I really learned how to cook working in restaurants. I learned from watching it. And that's
fantastic.
So yeah. I don't look, I got 3 young kids. So, I mean, I probably still could, post some of my dishes, but I don't know if people want to see a picture of my Chick-fil-A, because that's a lot of what our evenings are now, as we're chasing kids around town. But I still love to cook. My family, my wife's family, has a long-time tradition of Sunday dinner. So every Sunday we get together with the in-laws. The men cook, and
that's great.
So I do love to cook, but I learned it watching chefs in the restaurants that I worked in.
So you have this conversation with Kim Holmes, miss him dearly.
Yeah,
one of the just a fantastic gentleman. He was, and we recently lost Marilyn Haggerty. In fact, just this week. And when these titans or these lions of our community pass, I always get a little sadder than normal. I hate to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, Marilyn, of course, 99. That's a good run. I think most of us would take it
for sure.
But 70 of those years, she kicked out a column, in most cases 3-4 days a week.
Yeah,
kicked out.
wild.
I mean, you talk about leaving a legacy. My goodness. But when you think about your restaurant experience, so you start front of house, you have this conversation with Kim Holmes. At what point do you say, okay, it's time for me to take the reins, and do I have the chops from a business aspect? Because that's a completely different thing.
Yeah. My business partner, Sean, and I were working down in Fargo at the time. We were managers of the Hotel Donaldson when it first opened. So we'd moved down there, left Sanders to try a new venture. And the building that the Toasted Frog is in now came open and had been sitting open. And Kim actually contacted Sean and said, hey, there needs to be a restaurant in this space. What do you think? Sean and I had not talked about it. Didn't have any plans to open a restaurant. So this is a unique situation where the location is what spurred the venture. And Sean started to explore it. And then, he made the decision. He's like, well, I can't do this alone. I need to have somebody doing it with me. So he called me. And from that phone call until the time that we signed the lease on the Toasted Frog was about 6 months.
Wow. That's pretty quick isn't it?
It is. And I sort of credit the fact that we were young and dumb enough to move forward with it, probably without doing all the proper due diligence that I would do today.
So there's no wives or girlfriends at this point?
Sean had a wife. I did not have a girlfriend. Yep. So
easier for you to go, what the hell? than it was
great.
him.
Yeah, I can move tomorrow. Yeah, if you want.
Yeah.
So it was... I'm glad now that, because we moved and it's worked out for us, next year will be 20 years that we've been open.
That's nuts.
I know. But yeah, in that case, we started to, Sean already had the name. He'd been thinking if I open a restaurant someday, I want to call it the Toasted Frog for years. So he said, what do you think? I said, great, check. That's one less thing to worry about. That was done. Started to put together a menu that we thought Grand Forks would support, which is really still like the same menu concept that we have today. Not super high end. Not bar food per se, but somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Like I said, here we are almost 20 years later.
Where'd Fred Pickles come from?
So our former executive chef, Scott Franz, who's now owner and chef at Ellie's Ivy.
Yeah.
He created them. We, early on in the Toasted Frog days, I think, I wasn't there that night, but on a slow night, Scott was messing around with his cooks in the back and was deep frying some things and came up with that. And we passed out some samples to some people in the restaurant. And they said, these are great. Let's add a sauce. Sean went back and told Scott, and Scott whipped up a sauce, and we ran them as a special. They sold like crazy, and they've been on the menu ever since. So
they are just so.
Yeah.
As you're going on this journey, talk a little bit, if you will, about the use of alcohol.
Yeah, for sure. So that I tell this when I share my story. I mean, we opened in May of 2006 at the Toasted Frog. I went to treatment in May of 2008. So not too much, 2 years basically after we opened. I tell people just really candidly that, I was in a position when we opened the Frog of I was making more money than I had been ever.
Mm-hmm.
I was setting my own schedule to an extent, right? And I had access to all the alcohol you can imagine with a full bar there. And it turns out that is not a great equation for an alcoholic. So, I will say that it happened pretty fast for me from that point. So my alcohol use just increased and increased and increased. And a lot of, I would say, what you might hear or think are cliche things that happen for people that are struggling with substance use disorder were happening to me. I was showing up late to work. I was, missing family events, not returning friends' phone calls, all the things. I was doing all those things. And I'm so grateful today too, because I'll never forget, I had a conversation at the restaurant with Sean and with my dad. And my dad, Midwest farmer, doesn't really say much, and they just kind of looked at me and said, like, look, this has got to stop. Like, this is bad. So it sort of hit me, like, if my dad's talking to me about this, it's time to do something.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, I had a business partner in Sean who could have just said, like, dude, you're out the door. We're done with this. But he didn't. He said, look, you're not a bad person. You're a sick person.
Right.
Go get better. We'll figure this thing out. I'll hold down the fort. You go away and get yourself better. And 17 and a half years later, by the grace of God, I'm sitting here in recovery with you. So
So I want to go back just a little bit further. You had your very first drink at...
I was in high school. Yeah.
Pretty normal
Out
on some Friday night kind of thing.
I tell people, I mean, when you hear stories of people in recovery or people that have struggled, there's oftentimes there's trauma and, childhood things. I mean, I had a great childhood. I grew up in Grand Forks, sort of what you would picture probably as the all-American type thing, right? Great, loving parents, played sports in high school, was successful in high school. So it was never really a thing until I think after I got into the restaurant industry full time. That's when things really ramped up for me.
So you're humming along in high school, so you're 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really hit you right away that this... So does it go, I suppose, because addicts or most addicts anyway, talk about an escalation, right?
Yeah.
So it starts as... So most people know that I've listened to, I guess, my product through the years, that I'm a recovering alcoholic. 11 years last March.
That's awesome.
For me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I'll tell you, much like you, I believe, and I believe this to be gospelly true. So I'll just share it with you. I believe you and I could leave here at the end of this recording and I could have 2 beers. Mm-hmm. And I could go home and I could function. I could be just fine. But by Christmas, I'd be in the throes of it.
Right.
And I'd be right back and I'd be sleeping on your couch because that's what I would have for options. Right?
Sure. Yep.
And so when I say that, the escalation for me started, I didn't tell college. I was so afraid to disappoint my parents in high school and I was so afraid to screw it up for sports.
For sure.
That I was able to sidestep. But I didn't know the first drink I had. I knew the first drink I had. Oh, I like this.
Yeah.
I like what it does. So my question for you then is, does it go from 0 to 1,000, or were you like, yeah, I got into college. You mentioned that you quit college, but did you start down the path of 3 days a week, then 4 days a week? Well, every night as the restaurant's closing, let's have a bump before go home. Before you look at your watch, like, oh, it's 4 a.m. I better get going.
It was a slower escalation for me. Really it was after high school. I don't think, the first couple of years after high school, I did anything different than what maybe your typical freshman, sophomore college experience might be. I don't remember it being like really bad compared to other people my age at that point. But you said you start working in the restaurant and bar industry. And I started off, I was bartending. It's a part of the industry where it's kind of normal.
Yeah.
That, it's a hard industry. Like physically, like you work hard and then everybody at the end of their shift plays hard. That's just kind of, so for me, I think I was doing that at the same pace as others, but then all of a sudden that pace picked up. And then all of a sudden it was staying up until 3, 4 in the morning when everybody else was going to bed because they had to get up for work the next day. And then you start to have realizations of, I should scale this back, but I can't. And that's when I start having some eye-opening moments. Before that conversation that I had with Sean and my dad, I'd tried to quit on my own a number of times. And I'd say I can do it. I can scale back and that might last 2 days, Yeah. And then you start to justify in your head why you can get back into it. So, looking back on it now and reflecting, I'm a believer that people like you and me are built differently.
I agree.
Than people that can handle this and are normal with this. Normies, as we sometimes call in the recovery business. So, because of that, I agree with you in that, I've thought, could I have a couple beers? Probably. But if I start to play the tape forward into what that looks like,
oh my,
and I'm in a unique spot where I got sober before I met my wife. So my wife and my 3 daughters have only known me sober. So that's another motivating factor for me. I don't want to show them the other Johnathan.
So I know your children are younger than my daughter. My daughter's 23. When she was 11 is when I got sober.
Yeah.
And she's never touched this stuff. Now, we can tie this in. We're building to his current role with the state of North Dakota, and he's in Governor Armstrong's cabinet, for crying out loud. We'll get to that, I promise. There's also some collective stuff. For those of you that are listening or watching for that, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
My daughter, so my story just real quick was I got completely schmammered on my wife's 40th birthday.
Okay.
I mean, like, she knew probably 2 drinks in that tonight was going to be epic. So my wife does what my wife learned to do in our time together. She pulled back because one of us we got a child and somebody's got to get us home and all the things. So we do the thing. I get completely wrecked. Next day, she doesn't wake me up. She just lets me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I get up late morning. And it was weird, and I knew it was weird because that usually by 7, 8 o'clock, it's like, hey, I got, okay. So I didn't get any of that. So I get up at 11, I walk out into the kitchen, and I could tell things were different. And she just looked at me and she said, listen, if I'm going to be a single mother, I'm just going to go be a single mother. If you can't, and again, casual swearing is sometimes okay on the Jarrod Thomas Show podcast. Yes. She said to me, if you can't get your shit together, then we're going to be done here. And I said, okay, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to quit cold turkey. I haven't had a drink since, and don't plan to have a drink ever again. Mm-hmm. But you're having these conversations and you're feeling this way. So you go to treatment.
Yeah.
So what is treatment like? Is it like anything we see on TV, or is it more like, yeah, I mean, were you laying under the cover sweating and trying to, recover and was there shakes and was there all that?
I didn't have that. Fortunately, I went to treatment at a wonderful place, 28 days in a place called Project Turnabout in Granite Falls, Minnesota. And, they put you in a medical unit when you get there because, alcohol withdrawals are dangerous.
Sure.
You can die from alcohol withdrawals if it's not medically managed properly. So fortunately for me, I was only there for less than 24 hours. They monitored me, said, okay, you're going to be good. And then I was over on the unit and, 20, you're with 19 other guys, 20 guys. It's some like you see on TV. You're sitting in circles talking about feelings with dudes you've never met before.
How was that for you?
You know what? The first couple of days, it was rough. You look around and you're like, I don't have anything in common with these people. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
And they're probably all thinking the same thing. But then you pretty quickly realize that you have way more in common with them than you think.
Yeah.
And, when you start to match up, like, oh, I felt that way. We had come from totally different circumstances, but I feel the same way that you're feeling right now. There's a handful of those guys that I stay in touch with to this day because it's a life-changing experience that we shared together. Unfortunately, there's also 3 people that I know of that I was in that unit with that are dead because the disease got the best of them. They didn't come out on the other side. So, but yeah, it's 28 days of focusing in on the root causes of what got you there and giving you the coping tools, knowing that you're going to be facing adversity once you get out. 28 days is not very long, right? You don't go to a doctor and, he says, hey, you have diabetes. Here's 30 days of insulin. Good luck. This is you got to work on this stuff. So, but it set an incredible foundation for me for sure.
Did it stick for you the first time?
It did. Yep.
That's pretty rare too. Yeah,
it is. It is rare. But I had really, I talk about Grand Forks this way. I had a community that wrapped their arms around me when they didn't have to. I decided when I got out of treatment that I was going to be open with it, that this is where I was. I wasn't going to say, I took a 30-day vacation to Maui. I was going to tell people where I was.
Right.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, I wanted that level of accountability. I wanted, if people saw me drinking, I wanted them to call me out on it. But I also just felt like it wasn't anything to be ashamed of. I made a decision to improve myself. And I had great support systems around me. It doesn't mean it wasn't hard, and it doesn't mean that there still aren't hard days. But yeah, I'm fortunate. No relapses for me.
But they still sell drinks at the Toasted Frog.
They sure
right?
do. They sure do.
And Johnathan still needs to earn a paycheck.
For sure.
So I'm guessing, does it bother you to be around alcohol? Does it bother you to, mix a drink that maybe you're really good at mixing? Does that kind of thing bother you? Or do you just try to, when you got back, you just said, hey, man, I'm just going to go stare at spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And I'll greet people when they come in, but
Yeah.
I got to stay away from the booze.
It's a good question. It doesn't bother me really now. I can be around it. There are times still to this day where you get in situations that are uncomfortable, and I just have exit plans. If there are events where it's going to be really booze heavy, I just have an exit plan. And fortunately, I have a spouse that she knows, like when I say I got to go, she's like, let's go. Early on when I first got back, I had to set some rules for myself. Those first, 90 days are, I think when you're most susceptible to relapse. So, I just set rules that I was never going to be at the Toasted Frog alone. I was never going to be there past 9 o'clock. I wasn't going to be behind the bar without someone else present. Right. So just to sort of ensure that I wasn't putting myself in situations where the temptation would be too strong for me. So, but yeah, today I'm very fortunate that it's rare when I get bothered by being around it. My wife and I go to Vegas a lot. We love Vegas, but I look at it. I look all around and see a bunch of reasons why I need to be in recovery when I'm there. It's almost like good reminders for me. So I'm fortunate.
Do you worry about it with your kids?
I do. And I've had conversations, and this is something that when I get asked to do public speaking a lot, and I speak about the fact that I think we're not talking to our kids young enough. I think we, and my reasoning for that is lived experience. We've had to have conversations with our kids in my household because of who I am. Their kids are curious. So they ask questions like, how come mommy can have a glass of wine and dad can't? So Emily and I decided we're just going to answer those questions honestly. So my kids know that this is in them.
Yeah.
What my disease is in them. There's plenty of science that shows that there's a genetic slant to substance use disorder. So we just, we have regular conversations with them about they're going to need to be more careful than their friends with this.
Yeah. So. And I've had similar conversations with old Maggie Ray, and I've said, I read a statistic one time, and I don't, this probably wavered 5 or 10% either way, is about 85% of the world can have 2 beers after work and go home and get on with their life, and everything is fine.
Yeah.
And 4% roughly of that 15% that's left over, I think has closer to what we deal with than most, which is the demon is there, he's alive,
right?
And there's a bit of I don't want to say a constant struggle, but it's enough of a struggle where you're aware of it constantly.
Yeah.
So I shared that story with Maggie, and I said, just if you decide to go down this road, you just have to be careful. Her 21st birthday came around, and so my wife and I asked her, so what do you want to do for your 21st birthday? She said, you know what I really want to do? I want to go to Denver and watch UND hockey.
Great.
And that's, we looked at each other and we thought, it wasn't on our bingo card for that year, but we thought, well, what the hell?
A little more expensive than going to Bonzers.
Yeah, we can figure it out, right? Yeah. So we did. So we got together and we put a trip together for her, and she tells us she's never had a drink. I believe her. She wants to be a lawyer, and she said, first of all, I don't want the headache. She doesn't go to bars. She doesn't. And that makes me happy and sad because there are some. I don't want to crap all over the bar and restaurant business. I mean, that's not their fault.
Right.
But at the same time, it's I get sad because I still think you can go to and we've proven it. You go to a bar or a restaurant, you can still have a hell of a good time.
Absolutely.
You can be social, you can connect with people, you can hang out, you can share a meal, you can do all the things. But I tell you what, you tell me the same story. The third time I'm leaving.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. I don't really.
That's a good indicator.
I mean, once we're on 3, Hey, Bob, thanks, but I'm busting out of here at that point, right?
Right.
And so it's a little interesting dynamic that I'm not sure that everybody thinks about is, and I've told her repeatedly, like I think you tell your children is, you have to be so careful.
For sure. Yeah.
So careful. All right. So you're living your life,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing the thing, marriage, you got the kids, you got the businesses cooking, you're doing the thing. And then how does the First Lady of North Dakota, then First Lady of North Dakota, Catherine Burgum, become aware of Johnathan Holth?
So I met Catherine at an event a couple of years before Burgums were elected to office. And, as you have probably experienced a number of times, you run into people that you find out also don't drink.
Mm-hmm.
And they share with you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you talk about it for a while.
Yep.
So that happened with Catherine and I. We literally were at this event and went up to the bar and both ordered a Diet Coke and kind of like looked like, okay. And started talking. So found out that, each other were in recovery at that point and stayed in touch. But she hadn't gone they were public figures at that point, but she hadn't gone full public with her story. When they got elected, she decided that this was going to be her platform. As first ladies pick a platform typically, and she said, I want to work on stigma surrounding addiction, and formed the Office of Recovery Reinvented and asked me at that point to sit on the initial advisory council to get that office off the ground. So that's how I first sort of got into that with the Burgums.
What's getting that phone call like? Were you like, did you see the number on your phone? You're like, who is this? What is it?
Yeah. And, man, I owe a lot to Doug and Catherine. But it's a little bit surreal when you get that phone call, and then serving on the advisory council, and, it's kind of a funny story, like how I ended up in that job, then managing it. Is this where I segue to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So the initial director of Recovery Reinvented, fantastic person named Jenny Olson. She informed the advisory council that she was going to step down for another opportunity. And, she called me and said, hey, we need to find somebody for this job. It's an important job. And I said, well, tell me about the job and then I'll see if I can help you find somebody. So she explained all the things that she did and what she liked about it and what she didn't like about it. And I said, well, I want that job. I don't want to find somebody else for it.
How do I do this?
Yeah. So literally within 24 hours, she called Catherine and Doug and said we should put Johnathan in that role. Doug called me at 9 p.m. and on a Tuesday night, and said, if you want to do this, let's go. And I just said, something's pulling me towards doing more in this space. At that point, I'd shared my story publicly a little bit. Yeah. I'd spoken at Recovery Reinvented, the conference, and I just felt this sort of pull to do more in the recovery space. So it happened in about 36 hours, and all of a sudden I was in that role.
So what's the conversation with your wife like? So all of a sudden we're going to go from most of your life, 80, 70, 90% of it's here, right here within the whatever square mileage Grand Forks is, to, all right, honey, now I need to canvass the state, and I've got to spend more time in Bismarck, and I got to do all of these things. And I'm not asking you what it pays, but it never pays enough when you're pitching that to your wife. It could be $8 gazillion. Right. Yeah. Hey. The benefits are good. But, all of that is, and what I found in my life is wives don't care about that. It's like, where are you going to be here? What time? When can we expect to see you, kind of thing. By the way, we're raising little humans here.
Right.
How's that going to go? So how did that conversation go?
You mentioned earlier that I've sort of got this antsiness kind of in me and like to build things. Mm-hmm. So I'm also very fortunate because I don't think we necessarily really talked about it before we got married. But I'm fortunate in the sense that Emily, a number of times in our marriage, I've come to her with what most people might seem like a crazy idea. And I think she can see a certain look in my eye. And
like, I really want to do this, honey.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, her metric has always been like, look, if it's important to you, it's important to me. So you're a big boy. You know what you should do and shouldn't do. You go do your thing. If we can still pay the bills, right? If we're not talking about, having to worry about our mortgage and stuff like that, then do what you got to do. So it was a short conversation, but here we are.
You and I both married way outside of our class, man. Jesus. It's not even why they take pity on us is My goodness. I think they were destined for sainthood before they came here.
Yes.
And they're here to help us get to the other, to prove it, to get to the other side. Okay. So you start down this path, you're in this role, and Governor Burgum decides, yeah, I'm done. He had bigger aspirations. And of course, I would argue, not to get into a political conversation, but it worked out for him. I mean, he ends up in the White House, which I'm telling you, for a guy from Arthur, North Dakota, that's not bad.
Not bad.
Okay, so here comes Kelly Armstrong as the next governor of North Dakota, and he wants to make it a cabinet position. Am I understanding how this is working correctly?
So it actually, the Burgums were leaving office, announced they were leaving. And I had started to, we were given enough time where we could start exploring other opportunities. And I hadn't heard from Kelly at all, from Governor Armstrong. And I've known Governor Armstrong since college, since his UND days. So I've known him for 25 years. So I actually had already accepted a role in the private sector, to return to the private sector, and was doing that. I got a phone call from Governor-elect Armstrong at the time. Said, hey, I want to meet with you tomorrow. Are you available? Sure.
You don't say no to that usually.
Yep. So I drove from Grand Forks to Bismarck and met with him and sat down in a conference room with him. And he said, I have an idea. And his vision really at the time was, he said, Burgum was really focused on changing the conversation around addiction in North Dakota. They thought that was an important first step. If we're gonna move the needle, we have to change how people view this and how they talk about it. So it was a lot of working for the Burgums. It was a lot of marketing, softer side of things, you might say, communication type stuff. And Governor Armstrong said, let's take the work that they did and stand on the shoulders of giants and take it to the next level. So he said, I want to create a new position, and I want it to be a cabinet level position because I want this to be a hallmark of my administration. And I'd like you to do it. So here comes another one of those conversations with my wife.
That's so great.
But, so I will say this, both Doug Burgum and Kelly Armstrong, very persuasive gentlemen, and tough to say no to them. But also, like, they're that way because they're very strong in their convictions.
Yes.
Governor Armstrong's background, he's a former criminal defense attorney.
Yeah.
So he has seen a lot in the substance use disorder space. What people didn't know, I think, a lot about Kelly is his grandmother, Mert, who's his hero, ran the State Mental Health Association for 25 plus years.
That's crazy.
So he was having conversations about mental health at his dinner table with his grandma in the 80s when nobody else was talking about that stuff. So he's passionate about it. So, I accepted that position and had to make that unfortunate call to the private sector company that I already accepted a position with, and here we are today.
So the Commissioner of Recovery and Reentry.
Correct.
Okay. So do you start this? Now, I know you mentioned, okay, so you'd been doing some work with the Burgums.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Armstrong puts this on your plate.
Yep.
So do you start by developing, for lack of a better word, like a curriculum? Okay, this is what I think I want to do.
Yeah. There was some of that, but it was more than anything. I really started by going on a listening tour around the state. So anybody that works in these spaces, I just wanted to have a conversation with. So treatment providers, judges, state's attorneys, criminal defense attorneys. I went on just a listening tour and said, what are you seeing as gaps? What are you seeing as challenges? What are you seeing as opportunities? And, then you sort of put together almost like a SWOT analysis of the state of the state when it comes to recovery and reentry. But that was also happening at the same time the legislative session was happening.
Sure.
And that's one major difference. I got to get involved in the legislative session. Burgums didn't really have me do that. But there were a slate of bills that were important for this work in this legislative session. So I got to be involved in that and found out that I loved it. So
that's good and bad too.
I know. Good because it was another thing that I loved, and bad because I'm on a first name basis with the good folks at the Hampton Inn in Bismarck, right? I mean, spent a lot of time out
That's
there.
That's right.
So what Governor Armstrong knew was that there was an opportunity to sort of operationalize the relationship between private sector, local governments, state government, to make sure that as people navigate what can be a very complicated system, that they're not falling through the cracks. So that's been a lot of, this week was a perfect example. Monday night was, talking to the Grand Forks City Council. Monday during the day, lobbying some Fargo City Commissioners because they were having discussions. Tuesday morning, drove to Dickinson, spoke at Dickinson City Commission that night.
Nobody just drives to Dickinson, Johnathan.
Well, I've done it a couple times.
I mean, that's a lift.
Because all three of these communities were having discussions on these topics, and we wanted to make sure that they knew that the governor's office wants to be a partner in these discussions. The private sector can't do it alone. Local governments shouldn't have to take it on alone. The state is not going to take it on alone. We all have to work together. Complex issues warrant complex solutions. So really that's been a lot of the work is figuring out ways that we can collaborate better because, Kelly told me, he said, you're going to go around and ask people what they need, and they're all going to tell you more money. And you're going to have to look them in the eye and say, okay, we don't have that, so what's the next thing you need? And that next thing is stronger collaboration. There are things that the state can do better than local governments and vice versa. So we're just trying to sort of fill gaps right now and make sure that we're all on the same page.
So in the show notes, you will see what I'm about to reference. You'll see a lot of things in the show notes about today's visit with Johnathan. But the one thing, I watched a 22-minute video, and again, I referenced it earlier. You might remember because you referenced having white pants on, which I did. I mean, by the way, that's not a bad look on you.
I don't think I've ever done it since.
And you talk a little bit in there about how you were fortunate in that you had some resources available to you.
Yeah.
Your family hadn't given up on you. Your business partner was like, hey, man. And so you were, I suppose, at ease at some level because you knew when you went that the bills were going to be paid. But for 28 days, you could pause your life, so to speak, and go in.
Yep.
So when you think about how that's not, and I'm guessing when you were there, you met a lot of people that didn't, when they were leaving after 28 days, they had like, what now? Type of thought process.
Yep.
So when you think about that now in your current role, how do you figure that piece out? Because that's a pretty big deal. If you're here because everything is screwed up and people have given up on me and nobody's going to listen to me anymore.
Yeah,
that piece is such a big part of it. How do you help that person?
That's a big question, right? But you're exactly right. I've said that in many ways my recovery journey was privileged in a lot of ways, right? I mean, I had health insurance. I had a job waiting for me when I got back. I had a roof over my head. That support system, I tell people I've met thousands of people in recovery. I still have yet to find anybody that did it alone. People need community. I think the opposite, we often say the opposite of addiction isn't recovery. The opposite of addiction is community. Sometimes community can mean two people, but there's got to be someone else. Might be your spouse, whatever.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, when I was in treatment, we had family days on Sundays, 20 people in the unit. Less than 25% of the guys in my unit had families show up. I mean, most of the time, a lot of time when people are at this place, they've burned those bridges,
Yeah.
So I think what the state has done over the past decade is look at creating programs that fill those gaps. Okay, if someone doesn't have $1 and they don't have health insurance, is there something we can do through the state to make sure that they get the help that they need? So we've got things like the substance use disorder voucher that can be used if people qualify for that. We've got incredible programs like Community Connect and Free Through Recovery that are outcome-based programs that help people get back on their feet. So that's a lot of looking at, I think, what you described is exactly what we're trying to do, is to make sure that there's no one that, should they choose to get help and want that we're not ready to help them get there, right? So that's a lot of what we're looking at. Legislature's been great. I mean, they have funded these programs, and I will tell you, that's rare in a deep red state.
Yeah.
If you look at our other peer states that are deep red, we have done a phenomenal job of funding programs that help people get back on their feet. But I think that's a constant evaluation. There are federal things that impact that. So it's a balancing act.
I thought it interesting too, in that same talk you were having that day. that you brought out something that I hadn't really considered much until you started talking about it a little bit. And frankly, I started thinking about it, so I might have missed a few minutes of your speech because I was deep in thought, was businesses have a role in this.
Yeah.
You make, and I'm going to screw this up, you were obviously there, but you mentioned something along the lines of kind of identifying and then somewhat of an olive branch to say, hey, man, you okay?
Yeah.
Is everything all right? I mean,
Right.
do you need any help? Hey, by the way, and a lot of businesses have, I think they call it EAP. I mean, if you're really struggling, here's an 800 number.
Yeah.
Seems like we can do a little better than that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I use an analogy on this, like that, some might consider dramatic. My wife and kids will tell you that I'm perfectly capable of being dramatic. So it's not out of the ordinary. But, if you, I say just in terms of employee support, if you were at work and said, hey, boss, I need to leave from 2 to 3 o'clock today because I've got to go, I got to get more insulin, or I've got to go to chemo, maybe even something like that. I think most bosses don't even think twice. They're like, go, you know,
by all means.
If someone says, hey, boss, 2 to 3 today, I got to go because I got to go to an AA meeting. I think the typical reaction is, can you go to the later meeting?
Yeah, can you go at 6?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think people fully understand that meeting is life and death for some people.
Yeah.
I mean, that if they aren't able to connect to that community, that spiral that we talked about earlier in the show, that escalation can happen overnight. So I think there's no blanket one-size-fits-all policy that works for all businesses. I don't think the same set of policies for the Toasted Frog, which has 25 employees, is going to work at Altru, which has thousands of employees. Mm-hmm. What I've encouraged businesses to do is just really look at how they support people who are in recovery or who are looking for recovery. And it can be minor things that don't have to cost a whole lot. It can be just the way that we talk about it.
Right.
Like for me, I've one of the reasons that I've been very public with my story with my employees is I just want them to know that if they choose to get help, that they're going to be supported from the top level of their company. So I do think employers play a role here. And there are some states that have done really good work with employer recovery-friendly workplaces. They have policies that they've developed and programs. There are some incredible employers in North Dakota that do this. I just think we sort of underplay sometimes in the American construct of work. I mean, it's not uncommon for you to spend more time with your coworkers in a day than your family.
Yeah.
So, that's my work spiel.
Do you find that you're addicted to other things? I mean, like a Diet Coke or sugar or, you've recently, you look great, by the way, lost a bunch of weight. So there's a healthy addiction there, right? That some might say.
Yeah.
Do you find that part of your personality still exists? It just exerts other ways?
For sure. Yeah. And I have to be careful about it because the whole addictive personality thing, I mean, it's in me. Like I just don't really do anything half-ass.
Yeah. I
either just don't do it at all.
Preach, brother. Preach.
Or I just go all in. Right. So I have to be careful about that. Because some of those things can be very bad. Right. I am a dessert guy all the time. Oh. Right. I got to be careful about how much of those I'm keeping around the house. But I've got to be careful with things like, gambling and whatever else. Like I'm very, very aware of my personality traits and my family is too. So.
Yeah. And the thing is if you find yourself in a situation where you're not around people that know you, right? And then those little demons can go back to work on you. I was just curious because I've found that with, for me, it can be soda. For me, it can be sugar, which, by the way, from what I understand, and the medical folks I've talked to says that's not really all that uncommon. It's just,
for sure.
It's a place in your brain that is constantly looking for and craving to have a substitute because, well, okay, alcohol, fine, put that over here, but let's do something different.
Right.
I've also been reading lately, too, that kids, when I say kids, I'm 52 years old, so kids would be, I suppose my daughter's going to be 23 in December, so think in that age range, Gen Zers, the good news, I suppose, is they're not drinking as much, from what I understand, or really at all,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
But what they are doing is they seem to be smoking weed and eating.
Yeah.
So that's just replacing one addiction to the other. When we talk about legalizing things like pot in a state like North Dakota, where does your mind go?
I worry about that.
Yeah.
And for a couple of reasons. Number one, because, I've been around people who, who have been addicted to marijuana, and it greatly affects their life, right?
Yes. In a negative way.
Correct.
Yes.
I've also, Governor Armstrong has shared about this when he, has talked about the time that he spent in D.C. He didn't love it when he'd have his kids come visit him, and, you're everywhere you walk down the street, you're smelling it and seeing it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's great either. Right?
I would agree.
It demonstrates good behavior for our kids. So I worry about anything becoming too mainstream that is mind altering, and just what effect it can have on the population. Now, again, I'm fully aware that I'm coming that from a different experience and different, perspective because of maybe what I've been through. But it's not something that the legalization of marijuana is not something that I've been quick to jump behind when it's happened.
That makes two of us. I just think anything, regardless of it, it's different than booze. It's different. I've tried marijuana one time. I was in the 9th grade, and it didn't work. Or at least I don't think it didn't work. And I've never gone back to it.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about alcohol that was, I don't know, this is a weird definition of good, that was good for me, was I always knew what I was getting.
Sure.
Right? So there was no surprises in that process. I knew, and I kid you not, and you're going to think I'm kidding, I'm making a joke, I'm not. At beer 36, I knew what was happening.
Yeah.
And if you didn't think I could drink 36 beers, ask around. All right. So where do you think all this is leading? Do you have a large scale vision of somebody in every major city in North Dakota that is advocating for this, and maybe that's already happening and we just don't know it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know where it's leading. I've told people, it's getting to work in this space is it's an incredible honor. And so I'm going to do all I can. I think the governor genuinely believes that we have the opportunity to lead the nation in many capacities in how we approach this if we think innovatively and collaboratively. So I think, what we're trying to do right now is to identify gaps and try to fill those as best we can with the resources that we have, knowing that resources are finite. But while we do that, grow a network of people that understand this. I can't, underscore enough how much of a difference it makes in a community when the community starts to view addiction and talk about it differently. That, raising the level of empathy makes a difference. I've had a lot of conversations with city commissioners and county commissioners and legislators about just how they talk about this.
Yeah.
Because people are listening, Yeah. And so some of that stuff that I think we did with Burgums, which was, sort of more marketing communications based, the stigma reduction stuff, I think will always have to continue. So yeah, I don't know. It's, I use the overused cliche, we're building the plane while we fly it here, a little bit, which is exciting. But I think as long as we can keep moving the needle forward, ultimately moving the needle forward in this space saves lives.
Yeah.
So
isn't that the truth?
We don't take it lightly.
All right. So Johnathan, before we let you go, there's another passion project of yours that I want to make sure that we talk about today. And we used to call this car crash radio. When you just take one topic, it completely downshift and go to another one, and we're going to do that here. Although I am enjoying the fact that the rules are much different in the podcast world.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's got a podcast, and about 96% of them aren't very good. I hope to aspire to one day be in the 4%. But with that in mind, so how does Johnathan Holth decide, I don't have enough going on, so I think I want to start the 1883 collective out at the University of North Dakota? Tell me, and then explain to people from the founder exactly what the collective is. I bet most people don't even know what the heck it is you're trying to do here.
Yeah. So the 1883 collective, up until this point has been the name, image, and likeness arm for UND athletics. So, the rules changed in the NCAA a few years back where student athletes could now get paid for the use of their name, image, and likeness. And so the collective has found opportunities to do that over the past 18 plus months now that we've been in existence, basically to put money in athletes' pockets here. So that's the short, sort of high-level version of what we do. How we got here, look, I'm a sports super fan, and I always have been. And
gets on a plane to go to football games, the whole deal.
I do.
Yeah,
I do. A lot of them.
Yes. Yep.
And just sort of watching sort of the landscape of our peers in collegiate athletics, I'd seen that some of the institutions that we were competing against were pretty advanced in the name, image, and likeness space. So they were providing financial opportunities for their athletes that we weren't providing at UND. Now, the university up until this last June was unable to pay. Now with the House settlement, they're able to. But so I asked the question of the athletic department. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, picking up my daughter from cheer practice, and I was 5 minutes early. So I sent a message saying, what about a collective for UND? Would that be something that UND would support? And I got a message back from athletic department administration that said, let's make it happen. And we met for coffee shortly thereafter, like 2 days later. And then I found a name, image, and likeness attorney, which I didn't know was a thing until I got into this space. So that all happened in January, and we launched as an official collective, I think on March 1 of last year. So we took about 6 weeks to put it all together and form a business plan and set it all up legally, and off we go.
So it's still a thing.
Still a thing.
And so do you go to businesses and ask them to support or ask them for money, put plainly?
Yeah. Well, so we've had a membership structure and still do where, fans, businesses, whoever can support the collective. And then we take that money and we find opportunities for UND student athletes. There's a lot of people that take issue with this, right? I mean, it's ruining college sports and it's changed,
but get on board or get left behind.
Well, and we tell people you don't have to love it. That's fine. But I mean, the fact of the matter is our competitors are doing it and it's a part of the landscape right now. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that's important is that I can tell you nobody's getting rich at UND. None of these student athletes are driving fancy cars. The name, image, and likeness money that they're earning is paying their rent and their gas. And you and I know that being a Division I athlete is a full-time job. We had guys on the football team last year that were starters on the football team that would do all their stuff, all their schooling, all their practicing, they get done at 9 o'clock at night, and then they'd DoorDash from 9 to midnight so they could pay their rent. So we just wanted to find opportunities to make it a little bit easier for them to focus on their athletics and their academics. So yeah, people can support it, 1883collective.com. They can give financial gifts. Matt Bonzer and I have done this together. We've run it as skinny as possible. So we have an office and have not taken a dime in salary or compensation for ourselves since we started. So it's a
labor of love.
It is a labor of love. And I tell people look, I get to have access to the sports. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I love it. But we just felt it was an important gap that could help UND. So as, going back to your conversation earlier about building something, we built something. So, and we also went into it, I'll just say, with eyes wide open that the rules around this could change any day and it could go away tomorrow. and we were fine with that as long as it helped UND fill the need that it had in front of it right now. So things have changed with the House settlement now, but we still view the collective as an important role in terms of finding external opportunities for UND student athletes for marketing and sponsorship with businesses in the community.
It's going to sound, speaking of cliche, I mean, there just never is enough money. And so
for sure,
the rules that I think they've just got to change is that you can't always be recruiting your own players.
For sure.
Right. And every year is a free agent year right now. And maybe that one day will change, but one kid needs, I'm just using numbers. I'm not speaking to any kids in particular. I'm not looped in like that. So these are just pure speculative numbers on my part, but one superstar kid wants to come to UND, but he needs $75,000.
Yeah.
So where's that going to come from?
Right.
So I'm sure your phone buzzes, Matt's phone buzzes, the university looks around, and then can we get player X $75,000? Well, I
We'll
guess
try.
we can. And then the phone rings later. Yeah, the other school offered him 85.
Yeah.
So now what? And then you got to do the whole process all over again.
Yeah.
The next year. And to me, that's a part that has to change. I mean, you can't, at least it shouldn't be in my view. You shouldn't, if I'm going to give you $75,000 a year, I should at least get you for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Sign a 2-year contract, for lack of a better word.
I think we made some early commitments when we built this thing that I think are foundational, that will never go away, that are important to the people that live around here and support UND. And that's, our coaches are not interested in having conversations with players that are looking for the highest bidder. If when they're on the recruiting trail, if one of the first questions from player X is, how much money do you have for me in NIL? That's probably the end of that player's recruitment at UND. They're recruiting athletes that want to come here and have a transformational experience. We also know we have limited resources. I mean, we're competing, look at the hockey world. We're competing against Boston, Minnesota, Big Ten schools that have a lot of money.
Johnathan, you know what they say there. If you want to get rich, go to the Big Ten. If you want to win championships, you come to the NCHC.
Exactly right. We know we've had a number of athletes that have been offered 5 times what we offer them at UND that have chosen to come here because they know that this is the best development path for them. So we are not going to get into highest bidder wars. We're just not. The other thing that we'd like to say is we approach NIL sort of like we approach how we do things in North Dakota here. Nobody's just getting a check for being an athlete. You're going to do something for it.
Right.
Like we have expectations that you are going to earn your money out in the community. I'm not just talking on the ice or on the field, like out in the community. You are going to serve the community. You are going to do marketing for a business, whatever that may be. So we feel good about what we've done. There are a lot of collectives that have been breaking the rules for years because they weren't being enforced.
Right.
And we decided early on we're just not interested in doing that. We're interested in doing things that advance the mission, vision, and values of UND. And if somebody wants to try to break the rules, they can go to another school and do that.
And I suppose that makes it an easier partnership with the athletic department at the University of North Dakota, too. And everybody's walking lockstep in this process because, as you mentioned, North Dakotans really won't tolerate anything else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when the House settlement was announced, there were a lot of schools that announced that their collectives were going away right away. That could be for a number of reasons, but we know that for a lot of them, it's because the athletic department didn't have a great relationship with their collective, and this was their opportunity to get rid of it.
Yeah.
We don't need you anymore. We can do this all in-house now. We are, like you said, in lockstep with our athletic department and university administration, so we've always viewed it as how can we all work together, knowing that we have finite resources in the market that we're in, to do the best job that we have, put the best product out on the field and on the ice.
Yeah, that to me is really what it's all about. And your note too, the things I worry about is, there was old quarterback Kaminsky last year on the roster, didn't play much. This year comes out, looks to be a breakout star. And then the thing that you battle is all of a sudden, speaking of Big Ten, all the Big Ten schools are calling because they need a quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. What's if he comes to the administration and says, I need X, and the administration says, well, can't do that for you. Then, like you're saying, I mean, maybe the best thing for that particular player is your better opportunity is someplace else. We wish you the best of luck. We'll be watching.
We have had, I can tell you, I mean, we have had athletes that have had 6-figure offers from Power 4 schools that we have kept here because they want a development.
That warms my heart, man. I got to tell you.
I can tell you, like, we have had athletes
that's great.
Turn down big offers because they believe that this is their best path towards whatever they want to do next. So what we've said is like, look, we're not going to be the highest bidder ever, but we also know that that number probably can't be 0. Right. We probably can't look that athlete in the eye and say, I know that they offered you $500,000.
We're not giving you an extra sweatsuit.
Right. Exactly. I hope you like cheesy pickles because they're going to be unlimited. So, you know, we've tried to find that balance, right? Where we can say, look, we'll throw a little something at you and we'll support your development. And oh, by the way, you're going to play here. You might go transfer there for a big number and be 3rd on the depth chart. And if you do that for 2 years, there's not a lot of NFL scouts looking at you. If you've been 3rd on the depth chart, you're going to have film when you leave here that you can show people at the next level. So,
yeah. Do you see it continuing in perpetuity?
I don't know. It's too hard to say just because we don't know what the rules are going to be.
Yeah.
You know, the House settlement happened. That's changed things. And even since that, the rules have changed. There's new lawsuits every week on this stuff. I just don't know. I mean, we see it, like I said, in the near future being around and serving a valuable purpose to student athletes. But like I said, Matt and I went into it eyes wide open. You know, this was not a business venture for us. This was a supporting venture for us.
What I find fascinating is, again, back to you building things. You kind of looked around the proverbial room a little bit and you thought, well, how the heck are UND athletes going to be able to compete in this space? And then to have, you know, the knowledge, if you will, to just send the administration an email or a text or whatever you did, and it went, and then to get a response right back, like, yeah.
It was a Twitter direct message that I sent, and the reply saying, let's do it. I've got it framed up in my office. That's how the collective was born.
You know, Elon Musk would be proud. This is exactly what Twitter's for.
Right
We made it right here.
So,
well, Johnathan, I want to thank you again for doing this. If there's anything that I or we can do to help you, really in any of your roles, please let me know. I mean,
appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course, recovery, as somebody that's in recovery, it's extraordinarily important that people know that there's people out there that absolutely 1,000% support your journey.
Yeah.
That understand that, you know, sometimes, and I think this is a part we skip over a little bit, relapse is part of recovery.
It happens.
For most. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean,
nope.
It just means we had a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back to stacking the good ones, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, I'll put in the show notes to ways that you can, people you can reach out to should you find yourself in this situation. And I think guys like you and me continuing to talk about it, only helps and helps to normalize it. You had a T-shirt on that day, back to that YouTube video that I saw that said "Normalize Sobriety."
Yep.
And I would want to think that Leighton Media is a place that absolutely would support recovery 1,000,000%. I mean, we talk a lot around here about if you're having a bad day, you need to tell somebody about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it's conflict or whatever it is, we need to talk. We need to let's get it out in the open. Let's get it processed. Let's be open. Let's be honest. And I get there's rules there, and people hear that kind of stuff and they immediately recoil because you're putting yourself at risk. And I think you have to give a shit about people. And that's what I try to do.
Agreed. And I think, I mean, kudos to you. I think we undervalue sometimes just the power of sometimes people get permission to do that just by hearing you talk about your vulnerabilities. If they hear the boss say, you know what, I went through some shit and I'm here and it sucked, but I get it. If you're going through it, that gives someone permission to say like, oh, okay, I can talk about this. So just sharing your story, I think it's really powerful. So thank you for doing that.
You know, well, thank you. I weighed at one point, I weighed 437 pounds, and I was in a bar 6 nights a week. And much like in the 80s and 90s, I tell my wife all the time that this winter I'm going to write a book. And in that book, I'm just going to tell stories about when radio was radio. And in the late 80s and early 90s in particular, I didn't get paid. I got paid $600 a month, my first radio job in 1993. And the rest of my pay came from keg beer night. And I would show up at the bar, and there'd be 33 pitchers of beer sitting on the table. And I did everything I could to work my way through them. And then they would bring you a bar pizza at the end of the night, and that was your pay. And so that was 6 nights a week, and I could barely put gas in my car.
Yeah.
And if I didn't go to those bar remotes, I didn't eat.
Right.
And so I don't want to say I've been there completely. Everybody's story and journey is a little different, but just know that you can pull out of it. If anybody in 1993 would have said I'd be general manager of 5 radio stations in Grand Forks, North Dakota, it would have said you're an absolute moron. That kid's more likely to be dead in 15 years than he is to be doing anything. So it can happen. You can turn it. You can. And Johnathan took, my goodness, in the governor's cabinet for the state of North Dakota, man.
Wild. It's wild.
Isn't it crazy?
It is. I still, we had a cabinet meeting on Thursday morning, and I still, like, every time we have that, I'm sitting there wearing a suit and tie thinking, like, this is wild. Here I am. So,
it just, the governor calls once in a while, checks in, sees how you're doing type stuff.
Oh, yeah. Kelly's great because you'll hear from him. He's accessible. If I text him right now, he'll text back within 5 minutes. So he's great that way. So, and he cares about this stuff. He's, identified 5 pillars of his administration. Recovery and reentry is one of them. So.
I just think it's amazing. And it speaks. Do you think is it getting better in North Dakota?
I think it is in many ways. I think it's getting more challenging in the country in many ways. So that's, sort of what we're up against, right? I mean, there are a lot of factors. Actually, Mayor Bochensky talked about this at the city council meeting Monday night when we were talking about the homelessness discussion. He's like, look, I think we're forgetting about some of the macro stuff here, what's happening with the economy and how that impacts, if people can't pay the bills or if they're really stressed about it, how does that impact, how much they're drinking or things like that. So there's all these factors that are always coming into it that we need to be aware of. But I do think we have an incredible behavioral health division in our Health and Human Services department of people that really, really give a shit for all the right reasons.
Yeah. And
that makes a difference. It makes a difference when it comes time to go to bat to the legislature about why it makes sense to spend money on these things. So I do think we're making strides in North Dakota, but we have work to do.
Be kind. You never know what people are hauling around, man.
For sure.
And I think that's where it starts. Empathy. It was interesting. Again, back to these personality profiles. I was early in my career identified as somebody that doesn't have a lot of empathy. And then I learned that empathy is very simply doing my very best to put myself in your shoes and then trying to understand it. Still not perfect. And we're close, but trying to get better at it. But I think what I've learned more than anything through a lot of this journey is just, if you just be kind and you take the time to listen, a lot of times that's all people need, man. And the rest just comes pouring out.
For sure.
And then if you're a decent human being, you figure out a way to help them.
Yeah.
Is all.
Spot on.
Johnathan, I hope you will do this again with me sometime.
I'd love to.
I know you're an extremely busy guy.
Finding out we got a lot in common, man.
We do, man.
I'm a Sanford Power guy.
Are you kidding me?
That's
Is that how that happened?
Body by Anthony.
How come I don't see it 5:30 in the morning?
Because it's 5:30 in the morning. That's why. I'm a 5.
Oh, so you still got that bar restaurant party in you?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I'm a 5:30 p.m. guy. I'm super thrilled with the new 5:30 p.m. class now there. So.
You know what? Maybe I'll. I could adjust and I could join you for that. I mean, 5:30 to 6:30. I like that too because it's only 4 days.
You could do a double. You could do both.
I don't know what Anthony would do. You talk.
Get out of here.
You talk. You talk about an amazing dude in our community that people need to get to know. Anthony Mirondo is he's high on that list, and his wife Monique. My goodness, Lamoureux. I mean, they're all. Yeah.
Well, we talked about doing this pod a few weeks ago, and then I started listening to the show, and I was like, all right, he'll text me when he runs out of Lamoureux, and so then I was like, here we go.
You're not the first person that said that to me. Who's on the pod this week, Mario? I said, okay.
We've gotten to know them. They're just an amazing family. I mean, all across it. So all of them are fantastic people. So,
Good stuff. But Johnathan, thank you. And again, you can find all this stuff in the show notes if you missed any of it. If you want to get to know Johnathan better, there'll be some things in there for you to follow up on. I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you very much.
Likewise.